Hey, my name is Josh Hunking. I'm an attorney in Oregon. This is...
I'm Rohan, and I'm his paralegal.
Yeehaw. We're having a conversation today about Sam Bankman-Fried. We're doing a little bit like a true crime kind of deal and talking about the relative value of money. Janine is going to guide us through this conversation.
Okay, well, let's just begin with an overview. What do you guys know about Sam Bankman-Fried?
You want to go first?
I know a little bit. SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried. He was the golden boy of crypto. He was my understanding is he was the Mark Zuckerberg, if you will, of crypto, and he was kind of like was sort of talking about him as if he was the next, the biggest thing, and he was able to jump from 0 to 100 in just a matter of years. Billionaire. He owned, I think, 2 companies that are relative, Alameda Research and FTX, which was a cryptocurrency trading company. The coin in regard to FTX was FTT. And from my understanding is that he was just very friendly and very good at... He worked on Wall Street, I think, for a while, and so he was just very good at getting people to invest quickly in his businesses. And... I just remember one thing that sticks out is the Super Bowl commercial with Tom Brady and Larry David. So
yeah, I didn't know about the guy at all unless and until, like you had said, the golden boy status sort of became his thing, where as I think they called it a crypto winter, where things started to go down as far as the value of crypto and people started running into trouble with liquidity. He kind of stepped in on a couple of occasions, which might have been self-serving, right? I don't want this little exchange to fall, because if it does, it's going to be a big problem for me. So, but he stepped in, and that's when I first became aware who Sam Bankman-Fried was, which is weird because it's sort of like at the end of his height, because it wasn't very much longer before it was like, oh, now that guy's in hot water too.
What was 2019, I think, is when FTX kind of was, at least... 2019. I think the coin was like around $1.83 or something.
For the FTT
it was very
coin?
Yeah, for the FTT coin, and then it just quickly rose to almost $80 a coin within a year or two, I believe. And so it was just super quick. And my understanding was, he was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
He was the guy.
Yeah,
he was going to be the guy.
And he was always willing to do interviews with NBC hosts, and he was just always on. Who's the guy? Kramer, is that his name?
Jim Cramer.
Jim Cramer. Yeah, he was on Jim Cramer quite a bit, and just no one could stop talking about him. He was just I just picture his he had kind of a froey hairdo, and he would always wear headphones. He kind of looked like a nerd, like a gamer nerd kind of. So
looked like he didn't leave his house very often.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a trick, right? If you look like you're the black sweater wearing Steve Jobs, leader of Theranos, well, then you've got a little bit more trust, right? Yeah. You've got a bit of a mystique. I've seen those recent pictures of, I think it's Jared Leto, where he's looks kind of like Jesus, wearing all white with his cult of people following him around for some reason. Yeah. If you look the part, then people are more, I guess, willing to trust the person, which is just a flaw in the way that we think. But that was sort of his deal, right? Because Zuckerberg, he wears suits, but most of the time Zuckerberg dresses like crap. He dresses like
sweatpants,
a weird
and
nerd,
flip-flops, and but Zuckerberg was terrible at trying to relate. In my opinion, I think he's still not great at relating to people. Did you see that when he did Facebook Live, and he did he's trying to introduce Facebook Live, and he's barbecuing, and he's trying to relate.
Smoking meats earlier in the day. Smoking these meats. Lemon chicken. Smoked salmon. You'll love it. Bison sirloin. Ribs and sausage. So I'm looking forward to that.
He's I got my hot meats. It's just you're I don't care about your hot meats.
I am a real person.
Yeah. He's and he kept saying Sweet Baby Ray's. He's got my hot meats and Sweet Baby Ray's, and you're you're still a billionaire. I don't,
and a weird guy, because he has been a billionaire since he was young. So you get disconnected from the rest of humanity by doing that.
Yeah, and I don't know about SBF's sort of how rich he was. I mean, both of his parents are lawyers at Stanford, or professors at Stanford. I don't remember.
I think they're both professors at Stanford. Yeah.
So I mean, you've got at least the prestige.
I think yes, prestige, but I think the value of, I mean, that's a prestigious university, so I'm imagining they're each making a few $100,000 a year, if not maybe $500,000. So, I mean, if they're getting, $800,000 or $1 million a year while he's growing up, I mean, it's a very comfortable lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
You're not like the ultra rich. You're not Donald Trump Jr., but you're not that far off. You're not worried about where your next meal's coming from. You're not worried about whether or not there's going to be a roof over your head or anything like that. It's definitely extremely comfortable where money is not a big concern. And then also, I can't imagine that Bankman-Fried gets into crypto and finance and all that kind of stuff if his parents didn't have some knowledge to begin with, right? Like, you just wouldn't just like pull that out of nowhere and be like, and I'm an artist now.
Well, he studied math, I believe, in college, and then he went to MIT. So I mean, he's not a dumb dude.
No,
like he's
smart.
clearly very smart.
Yeah.
So I mean, often people who go to MIT sort of are in that weird kind of niche of, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm just going to trust you. And I think like that's part of what you're talking about, the mystique, or like the kind of like, oh, who is that person? When you're talking crypto language at the level that SBF was able to do and still somehow be relatable because you're wearing big gamer headphones, it kind of just creates this weird kind of like, whoa, this guy's really smart and I kind of like him.
Yeah. I think the likability factor's there. I think there's trust in the costume. If I was to walk into court in sweatpants and I was going to go try a case with sweatpants on, I'm going to draw some blowback. Not just from the judge because the rules say I got to wear a suit, but they're also going to think, gosh, what's wrong with this guy? And I think that sometimes when I look at the way some other lawyers are dressed, they've got, shoes that don't match the belt with pants that are just wrinkly and like a corduroy jacket that's kind of fallen to pieces. Yeah. If you don't wear the costume, you don't look the part, then you lose the trust of the people doing what you're kind of trying to do. Yeah. And if you're a crypto guy, the costume is kind of a half ratty t-shirt and some sweatpants and gamer headphones.
And I think that makes sense because I think the costume is trying to tell the customer and consumer, you can be rich like me to where you don't have to go to work. Yeah. You can wake up and work from home for an hour a week. Yeah. And like that's it. Like you're a self-made person, and so I think that makes sense as far as like the costume of like look at me, I look like you, and
the costume builds trust. I think is what it does.
Yeah.
Just like the black sweater, the black turtleneck.
And I mean, I know he like in some of his interviews he'd have his dog like with him, and so there's that kind of relatability of like, come here, dog, and like pet the dog, and people are like, oh, he's friendly and likes animals.
Yeah, it's just a regular old billionaire over here.
Yeah, exactly.
So as far as our first task on this guided conversation was overview, and I think we've overviewed, right? Yeah. And we've overviewed. Where are we going next?
We're going into the collapse of FTX.
Should we maybe just go to the rise first a little bit, like? In the sense
I'm cool with that. I wasn't around for the rise. I wasn't tracking FTT or FTX. It wasn't until things started to go to shit that I even knew about the guy.
I mean, it was kind of like, from my understanding with FTX, it was kind of like the Dogecoin phenomenon of just like all of a sudden everyone was talking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm not comparing it in Doge in the sense that it wasn't a meme coin, it wasn't just trash.
Right.
It clearly had value, and FTX, the platform or whatever, like clearly was doing stuff so much that Binance, the biggest crypto platform trading company, was investing in it, right?
But I think FTX actually surpassed Binance. I think it was bigger.
Was it bigger? I mean, that makes sense. I know that Binance was heavily invested in it to the point where when Binance decided to withdraw, that's what caused the collapse.
According to Janine's fact sheet, it was, I think, only 7.6% might be what Janine had found that they had owned.
Was that CZ as his name or something?
Yeah, but
COZ.
And that guy is like in trouble now, right? Like he's got his own criminal charges going on, which is weird about that group of people who like were living in the crypto space for such a long period of time. They're very smart and then like shady, which is like a weird combination. But also, like, I think he may have my memory is that he did do it, that he caused it, where he's like, hey, if you guys look behind the curtains on FTX, you're going to see they don't have any money. And that he caused it by sort of saying, like caused a run by saying they don't have any money over there.
Well, but I think the issue is, so there was a leak of, my understanding is there's a leak of like the spreadsheets from Alameda Research. So
what's her face did?
Yeah, so for like 2 years, Bankman-Fried was very open, saying, yes, I have these two companies that are both in crypto, Alameda Research and then FTX, but they're not in conflict with each other. We don't, he's like, in fact, I think...
What else would he say? Would he say, these companies are in conflict with each other, we trade on inside information, but it's fine, guys.
I think he was even sort of saying on the record, like, I don't even run Alameda. I don't even know what's going on there. Yeah. And so what was happening, my understanding is...
That's not what the jury found.
It's like, I mean, the coin jumped from $183 to $79, and I think what they found, and you can, fact check me or whatever, but I think what they found was he had so anyone buying crypto on FTX, FTT, all of those FTT coin, the money behind that wasn't staying on FTX, it was going into Alameda, and then Alameda was then buying FTT coins to boost the price.
My understanding may be wrong, but I thought it was slightly different than that. That basically Alameda had access through the computer code to an account at FTX where it was a loan, right? Like, so like FTX was like loaning money to Alameda, but the way the code was set up is that it didn't matter if it had a negative balance. It could just keep borrowing money from FTX as long as it wanted. And then, that is in fact what Alameda ended up doing, is like borrowing money from FTX to buy the FTT token.
To boost it up. Right? So, but the issue is my understanding with crypto is the market value is based upon
supply and demand,
but also a variety of hundreds of thousands of people determining the market, not one company.
Well, that's
right?
your theory of what you want to have happen. But even with something like Bitcoin, aren't there people who have got just like 40% of all the Bitcoins are owned by this one guy over here? That's how like monopolies work.
Right. And I think you're right.
Not really how monopolies work.
You're not wrong. That's probably how almost everything is in the crypto world. But I would say the difference is with Alameda. The issue is, as soon as you sell, because you want to get out, what do? You crash the entire thing.
If you're the big guy, you got to slowly sell off. But the same is true with like Musk and Tesla, right? If he's got a huge portion of the ownership interest in Tesla, if he just sold his whole ownership interest, that's a lot more supply on the market that you're going to have to find dollars for demand. So you have to stretch it over time to not crash the price. Yeah. He can't just sell all of his Tesla today and be like, oh, I'm good, and have it all get bought, because the price of Tesla will just go to the fucking floor.
But does he have like the majority shareholder? And
Janine can fact check it, but I think he's got like 35% of Tesla. Vast majority shareholders.
So what is it? I think it was like 14.6 billion is what FTX was worth.
According
much?
to Janine, it was 32 billion at its peak.
13% stake.
Oh, okay. He's only got 13% of Tesla? Oh, he's got very little. So he's slowly sold a lot over a period of time.
Yeah. So my understanding with Alameda was they weren't, and I mean, it wasn't above board. Like, they weren't, no one knew, everyone thought who was buying FTT coin that their money was safe on FTX trading, right?
Which, in my mind, is the value of money, is just trust. Is that if you trust that it has value, it has value. And that the same is true with Bitcoin, and that's why, guys like you and I didn't buy in 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So we didn't really trust that there was any actual value in that, and that it wasn't just a scam. And some things are turning out to be pump and dump scams in the crypto world, but it's the trust that gives it value.
Right. Like if you're writing a book and you say, hey, would you be an investor in my book? And I say, yeah, I'm going to give you $5,000 to help get your book out there. And then I find out that $5,000 is going towards painting your fence at home. Like, that's like kind of a conflict, and I ate a distrust. I thought this money, and your response as well, I'm trying to make my home nice enough that when people come to visit, investors come to visit, they're like, this guy has a nice home. Yeah, I'm willing to invest in him. And I would sort of say, I gave you the money for the book, not for your own home.
I guess. I mean, I was talking in a more nuanced way about Janine's fact sheet says that $8 billion was lost. But that $8 billion was in terms of crypto coins. And as we saw, like right before we started, Bitcoin just went, up by 2,000 per coin.
Yeah.
So the relative value of the coins to the money changes over a period of time. Like I just read a story of a guy who, is a couple weeks back, where he stole, you remember Silk Road?
Yeah.
You used to buy drugs and shit like that. And
Yeah.
you used to think, oh, the feds can't track this. And then it turns out they can. Give them enough time. They'll figure it out. We stole a bunch of money from Silk Road. So stole money from criminals and then just sat on it for a long time. Yeah. And then it increased in value because Bitcoin went way up in that time period. So what he originally stole was only worth like a couple $100 million, but it was worth billions when it was done. And that was the argument from the defense attorney at sentencing. Is like, look, the U.S. government has not been harmed by the actions of this particular person. He stole this stuff from criminals, sat it in an account, and when the government sold it, they made extra money. If anything, you should be thanking this man for stealing this money from these criminals.
I mean, I think a part of the issue, my understanding of part of the issue is like, you should have the right to be able to withdraw your money from.
That's the expectation from like a bank or from a crypto thing or a brokerage account. That's the expectation.
But how many times does it happen that as soon as something like pumps like crazy or dumps like crazy, the platforms all of a sudden go down, right? And so I think that's what happened. That's part of what happened. What was the Reddit what was the game, the Game Trader? Was that what it was? Where all of a sudden it went up. Trying to remember.
GameStop.
Yeah.
I love GameStop.
Yeah. I mean, that was something similar, right? They decided to push against the.
And I think it might be slightly different with what Robinhood was doing because that related to settlement delays and how if yes, we'll buy it in 3 days, but the price triples by the time you buy it and you only took $100 from a customer and have to go out to the market and buy it for $300. You've got a problem. Yeah, right. Your settlement delay creates a different problem there.
But Robinhood always, again, I don't remember enough, so we might need to do some fact checking. But I thought Robinhood always claimed that they had enough. Right. Mm-hmm. That's the thing is you're claiming we've got
I don't think so in front of Congress though. I mean, I think publicly, there's always enough.
We've got enough.
But that's true with banks, right? Like even any fractional reserve banking, you end up in the same boat where the bank doesn't have $1,000 that's in your account. They may have $1,000, but it's not sitting in your account. And if you take everybody's deposits and add them all together, that money is not all there.
Right.
Which is dangerous if everybody tries to withdraw their money at once.
Isn't that what happened with the Great Depression, right?
Or Silicon Valley Bank.
It's funny because my dad, who's he's a little bit older and doesn't understand the crypto stuff.
Your father's older than you?
He's slightly older.
That's a unique situation
I'm
where
adopted.
your dad is older than you.
I'm adopted. My dad adopted me when he was 5.
Yeah.
But he's very skeptical of the crypto, and he says it's not real money, it's not real whatever. And I tell him what is real money, right? Because I say the very fact that if I had $100,000, I don't. If I had $100,000 and wanted to withdraw that from my bank, I could not, for the life of me, go to my bank today and withdraw $100,000. You'd have to sign tons of papers. You'd have to. I think there's probably protocol on requesting and having a bunch of stuff.
They may not have that much money at one particular bank, but I think if you called Chase Bank in advance and said, "I'm going to withdraw $100,000," they would give you $100,000. It's your money. How else are they going to be able to keep it?
Right, okay, so maybe the amount is more. Maybe it's like $1 million.
If everyone withdraws all of their money from the bank at the same time, the bank doesn't have enough money.
Right, but the point is, if it's my money, I should be able to have access to it no matter what, and you don't. You don't have it. You couldn't go to your bank and withdraw everything without some type of limitations or some type of we've got to go through this process first and this process. Maybe. So then the question is do you really have money, or is it just kind of
you have money if you believe you have money? That's the point where trust is the only thing that money actually is that you trust that it has value, and because you trust it has value, it has value.
Right. I mean that's I think the Dogecoin has value, so then I just buy this random. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the person who created the Dogecoin created it with the point of saying this is all just kind of bullshit. None of this is real.
But even if it is bullshit, and even if it isn't real, which is what I think money is stupid, and I think that it's not real, but at the same time, we use it as fluid within our system to be able to apply a value to things liquidly, where we I will accept money for the generator if I'm selling it on Craigslist.
Right.
And then I will use that money to buy beans over at the store. Like, everybody is cool. If I was to try to trade beans for a generator, it's a much harder transaction to match somebody who wants beans in the right quantity with somebody who has a generator that they want to give away for beans. To match the transaction is much more difficult without money.
Unless your name is Jack.
Yeah, there you go.
And you
you get all the beans in the world.
Yeah.
But money is just that intermediary, that proxy that allows you to apply value to things so that you can make a more liquid trade, so that it's just easier to make a trade because we just convert it to dollars and then back out.
So, I mean, obviously, and the currency of money changes over time, right? At some point, it was diamonds and gold and silver, and that's still around. Clearly, the metals, is still. I have a little bit of silver, but
and those things are like scarce in the real world. There's a finite amount of silver on planet Earth. You could go to another planet and probably get more silver, and you might be able to like use chemicals, because my buddy up in Portland makes diamonds. Like you can make diamonds now. So it's finite in some way, not a zero transaction cost to create more diamonds, and it's actually a very expensive transaction cost to create more diamonds. And maybe you can do that with metal, maybe not. Maybe that's alchemy, and maybe that's fake, and you can't actually do that. But at least there's scarcity, right? Yeah. I mean, the number of Dogecoin that exist is just computer programming, right? You just create more computer programming, and ta-da, Doge.
Well, but like with XRP, they made it a limited amount to whether you can't make any
on
more.
Purpose to give it value, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a structure of the design. Is you want your dollars to be difficult to recreate. That I can't sit in my backyard and just write $50, boom, and now I go to the store with my $50. Yeah. So you have trust in the thing because the thing is difficult to recreate. It's difficult to recreate or fake something that would qualify as an XRP, which then gives it value because of creating the scarcity. That's IP. That's all that it is. You're applying artificial scarcity to something to provide it with value.
Right. So then, what then determines? But I mean, like, the value of something in diamonds or gold or whatever has never fluctuated in the way that cryptocurrency does today, right? Isn't that kind of what makes it so dangerous?
Are you talking about fluctuating, though, in terms of fluctuates in relation to other things? 2 diamonds is worth 4 ounces of gold. Well, now it's only worth 3 ounces of gold because that's, the sands of time have changed things.
Or, silver is, I can't even remember what, it's like $20 an ounce or 20?
It's up to 25 right now.
Okay, so it's like $25 an ounce. Like, and that's taken how many years of doing this and this and this? Whereas, like, Bitcoin went from $180 to $63,000.
But think about what you're saying, right?
8 years.
You are talking about money in terms of dollars, U.S. dollars, and so that's your standard denomination for value, and has been for the world for a long period of time at this point. And that's the way that you value something. So, is it true that the value of silver has gone up, or has the value of a dollar gone down? And that's the relative value of money. We're going to focus a little bit more on the fall of FTX, resultant accusations, convictions that have occurred since then. We're in December of 2023, so he's been convicted at this point. We're going to frame it in terms of a justice system so people are on the same page about what's going on with like what has actually occurred and what is left to occur. And that's apparently as far as we're going to go, according to Janine.
So, it's my understanding that the fall happened November 6th of 2022.
Over a year ago?
My understanding is that there was a spreadsheet or some document leaked that somehow linked Alameda's money with FTX in a way that kind of said, hey, there's a little bit of fraud going on here, and FTX doesn't have the type of money that they're claiming they have, or Alameda's claiming, they're using FTT coins on their spreadsheets for their funding, and so that's kind of my understanding of like when people started to get kind of like, wait, what's going on here?
See, and I thought it was Binance. I thought Binance was like, hey, those guys don't have any money. Pull your money out now before it's all lost, which created a run on the bank. I think it's a combination of the two, because I think what happened is Binance found that out, and then they said we're withdrawing. I think what was it, $1 billion or $1 billion or something. I mean, they withdrew a lot on November 6th, which then caused, I think within a day, FTX to lose $4 billion. And then it just, by the 7th, it was like, I don't know,
fact check, $6 billion or something, $7 billion. I mean, it just kept going up and
Trust
up
was
and up.
lost, and then
Yeah.
value is deteriorated
And I
because the trust is
remember
lost.
SBF actually put out a tweet. That was part of it. Is he put out a tweet with his certified, like username saying, false statements are being made and we're fine. Like
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. We're
Everything's
great.
fine.
Like FTX is great.
Don't take your money, please.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. So I mean, he was obviously lying to
The fall was abrupt because it was like
quick,
somewhat public. The value of FTX in terms of dollars goes down quite a bit, and then he kind of goes on a public tour of, well, let me go get the real story out there. Tries to rally some friends, ends up click and go on bankruptcy, which then those guys, I don't know, with the bankruptcy guy who took over immediately, that didn't seem to me to be in good faith to be like, oh, I'm in charge. Holy shit, it's a dumpster fire in here.
Yeah.
Like, that to me is like, dude, if you're trying to salvage some value on the assets, you don't walk in and be like, uh-oh, this is terrible.
Yeah.
As you're trying to salvage what remains of FTX. But
Well, and I wonder how much of his role as sort of a do-gooder affected people's withdrawal, right? Because you're talking about trust.
Yeah.
If people don't really know, people don't really know the CEO of Binance the way that people knew the CEO of FTX, right? It was like,
yeah.
I mean, I would say, for example, when you're watching Tom Brady on a commercial, or Larry David, or Steph Curry, I believe, was also. These are known people that people trust.
Yeah.
And if they trust SBF, then we should trust SBF. And I think there's a term called parasocial behavior, which is a term created from our social media phenomenon, which is like you can be a YouTuber or influencer and get to the point where people are watching you and they feel like they know you because they watch you and they follow you every day, and they're like, oh yeah, he's a great friend, and you're like, have you ever met him? And you're like,
nope.
No, but I know him.
Yeah.
I know him.
Yeah.
And I think
weird.
that's what happened with SBF, is I think people felt like they knew him.
Yeah.
Because of how available he was through his content. And so, when all this happened, it was like, well, screw him, I'm withdrawing my money and I don't know what's happening. But from what I remember reading, there are a lot of people who tried to withdraw their money and they couldn't. They tried to get a hold of FTX.
That's what happens when you run out of money, right?
Yeah.
It's like you go to the bank and try to. I mean, you've seen It's a Wonderful Life, which I just watched the other day.
Clarence.
Yeah, if you don't have more money sitting in that vault, you get down to your 18 cents and you don't have any more money to go.
And that takes place during the Great Depression, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Isn't that around
I think
the
so.
same
It's
era?
like a bank run or a savings and loan run, I guess, because it wasn't a bank.
The beginning of the Great Depression. But, I mean, it's essentially the same. You're exactly right. It's the same thing. So it's kind of scary of like, oh, I'm putting all my trust and money into this thing, which is why the SEC, quote unquote, claims to be like on our side, on the side of the people, saying, hey, we're just trying to protect you. And it's like, I don't know.
I think the SEC is a fun trick. I think that for whatever reason, as an accident in history, long before I was born, my profession, lawyers, and the finance guys realized the truth of this. You either regulate yourself or someone else will come regulate you.
Yeah.
And you want to be regulating yourself because then you get to pick the outcome, right?
Yeah.
And if the outcome is we're going to disgorge you of 30% of the profits you made on your fraudulent scheme, no, look at this big fine we had to pay, and we're keeping 70% of the profits on the fraudulent scheme we had.
I mean, is it safe to say there's a similarity between that and DAs?
District attorneys?
Yeah. I mean, in a similar, if you're working for the state and you're pursuing the bad guys, the spotlight is less on you and more on the bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, you might be right. I would think of it more maybe in the police officer realm than in the district attorney realm, fair. Because, as long as you're on the up and up with the other guys in the goon squad out in whatever Louisiana, you can go and beat people up all you want, and you never get in trouble because, all these other cops in the room say that you didn't do anything wrong, and it never gets reported because who else is going to report it? You're the reporters. You're the people that we would go to get these things reported. We are way off topic though, and Janine should jump in and force us back on topic.
So with SBF,
we did Collapse, and then we did public apology tour, and then
Let's jump into some of the things he publicly said that didn't really help his defense.
what are you talking about? He was totally above board. Free my guy.
Well, but didn't he have an interview where he was on the record, kind of admitting to some of his and then at that point it was shut your mouth, dude. You are testifying right now, technically. Like,
and the news stories that I read, and I wasn't in the room during his trial, but the news stories that I read were that it was kind of the same in testimony. That he came across a little bit schmarmy, a little bit of, this guy is a fraudster. That even his testimony didn't help him. I mean, if you're him, you have to testify. You don't have the ability to sit there and be silent and just hope for the best. You have got to get on that stand and you got to testify, which I think does kind of cook him, because in the context of the trial, right, you've got accusations, because we live in the United States, which has an accusatory adversarial system of justice. You make the accusation, you argue it out, judge picks or jury picks, and then there's the resolution to your conflict. The structure of that system in the accusation stage, with the adversarial nature of it, the prosecutor was, according to Janine, was trying to sell, this is garden variety fraud. Garden variety fraud, didn't want to lose people in the details. You didn't want to lose lay jurors in the complexities of crypto. But he's just stealing. That's all that this is. And then the defense was sort of, not intentionally, I didn't do it on purpose, right? And just sort of like, maybe there was a loss of relative value compared to dollars, but it's not like we were actually trying to take stuff from people.
Why are you under the assumption that he had to testify? Like, I guess I don't understand why you think he had to.
If it's strategic for me, if you've got all of these insiders and friends, right, you can, from a defense attorney perspective, get up and try to attack the credibility of the former ex-girlfriend, the business partner who thought he got a raw deal, 4 years ago, and then this other guy over here, and then there's a lot of people who are now supposedly your friends in your inner circle who are testifying against you, and you're cooked. If you sit there and say nothing, you're done. There's nothing you can do to overcome what the jury sees, which is, well, all your friends just got up here and said you're a bad dude. I know the judge told me that you have a constitutional right to remain silent, and I can't consider that in my deliberations, but I'm thinking about it.
But no one wants to, like, fry the secretary. People want to fry SBF, right? So what's the likelihood of a secretary or another worker feeling like, oh, my life is on the line if someone comes to me and says, if you don't testify against SBF, we're going to cook you. You're not really going after me.
But all the folks that testified against him got their own indictments and made their own plea deals and agreed to testify.
They did get their indictments. Oh, okay.
That creates an interesting piece of historical information, right? So you start out with our system of justice in Old England with basically sources of power. You get the church, you get the king, you get the common group of people, dudes between the ages of 15 and 35. There's your police force, right? Because you don't have enough people, you don't have a high enough population density to even have a full-time police force. So that's your society, your structure. You go to the king and you complain to the king or the church and say, hey, I need you to help me do this because so-and-so wronged me. That system builds over time to where you eventually get a constable system and you get full-time police, and police get this cool trick of, hey, we're going to call you state's witness, right? You're a state's witness. All you got to do is tell us all the bad things that this guy did. You tell us one time that your gang of thieves, kidnapped a guy, and you're free. You don't have to go to jail. Everybody else does. But then the other guy, right, who's also there is like, well, he didn't tell you about the other 5 times that we kidnapped people. And then you're no longer state's witness, right? Now you're not state's witness. Now you're going to jail, and you already admitted to your kidnapping, so you're going to jail. And this other guy who's talked about 5 kidnappings, well, now that guy is the one who's the state's witness, and he's not going to jail. So then the first guy kicks it back. Well, let me tell you.
It's currency is what you're saying.
Let me tell you about 10 different kidnappings that we did. And then you're just making stuff up, right? Yeah, you're I'll tell you about all the heinous crimes. We've been torturing babies. We've been, just because you're trying not to go to jail. Yeah. So you're just making stuff up to tell the government, to convict other people, so that you get to be the state's witness, so that you get to avoid punishment. And there's still remnants of that. That's what you get with some of these plea deals is, hey, we'll let you stay out of prison so long as you say what we want you to say. Against Bankman-Fried.
But you have perjury, though, right? You have...
you do have perjury rules that are out there, but you don't think that changes. So you can say something truthful accurately and inaccurately, and it can still be truthful because human language is fungible, right? Yeah. So I can say, if I was to say that I'm on Mars right now, that would be a lie, and if I was under oath, it'd be easy to prove that was perjury. If I could say that I was wearing medium blue jeans under oath, I'm not really committing perjury. And frankly, they're medium, but kind of on the darker side, and leaning a little bit maybe more towards the dark side of genes.
Because the color of blue is subjective.
Yeah, and so that's what you do. And if I just conveniently omit pieces of information or am less accurate with pieces of information that are damaging to me, it'll shade my testimony if what I'm trying to do is stay out of jail and do what the government says. And I know that the government is going to put me in jail if I don't say what they want me to say. It does impact testimony. But the question is, does it impact testimony enough without enough corroboration to be able to overcome in the minds of the jurors the testimony that they're actually giving, which is so-and-so committed crimes?
So in bringing this back to SBF, my question is...
Well, I'm talking about the structure of the trial. You can't prove if you just sit there and say nothing.
Yeah.
Even with all the great cross-examination in the world, it doesn't matter. But you've got to get up there and affirmatively say if you're SPF, or you got to have some evidence somewhere that, look, we weren't committing crimes or you're cooked.
And I'm trying to go into the psychology of SPF here and thinking like, okay, if you're going on a stand, you're going to try to give the right information but omit the information that is damaging or damning to you. So it's kind of like you're sort of like walking on a fence of, what do I need to give the jury to convince them, hey, look, I knew some stuff. I'm not like just dumb, right? Because they're going to see right through that. But I also don't want to, self-incriminate.
That's really a good point. I think that's probably one of the biggest problems if you're SBF is you can't ride that line of the I'm an idiot defense. Like, I can defend people because they're idiots when on an I'm an idiot defense. Like, I should have known better than to do this, but I didn't because I'm just kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But if you're SBF, you can't really credibly make that defense. You're too smart to be stupid.
But I think the other thing that's just so compelling is that SBF, the whole reason he became a billionaire is because he was likable and relatable, and he was willing to be friends with the common people. And so I think probably what happened over time in his own head is he couldn't take off that hat when he needed to. And I'm imagining if you're testifying in your SBF, you're not able to put on a hat of like, these are not people who are now no longer on your side. So then you end up giving more information that you probably should have. You're still in your head thinking like, well, like I'm relatable. I'm still the guy in the chair with the big headphones.
This has worked 1,000 times in the past. It'll work again.
Exactly.
And it's just not going to work in front of a jury in those circumstances.
Yeah. I didn't watch it, so
no, neither did I.
I don't even know if you could, but I didn't know if it was public or.
Oh yeah,
it was.
Yeah, all you would have to do is where was the trial held? D.C. or New York?
New York.
All you had to do was just fly out to New York and take a week off of work, and you would have been able to sit in the courtroom and just watch the whole thing. Yeah. Who has that much time?
I mean, they were risky in the sense that no one knew who were purchasing FTT that their money was in Alameda.
But if they just kept winning and backed off of it and didn't lose any money and crypto just kept going up and up and up, then everything would have been fine and Sam Bankman-Fried wouldn't go to jail.
I mean, what is the definition of risk?
Yeah, I mean, everything, I guess, has some risk.
Everything is risky,
if I put my money into cash, I've got it in the form of dollars, and inflation eats away at the value of my dollars. I should have put that cash in the form of silver, and it would have done better than had I left it in the form of cash.
But then silver, you have to have a physical... because you can turn in your cash to a bank if need be. But silver...
You can put it in a safe deposit box.
I mean, but silver has a physical capacity to it, right? That like
yeah, but you can also structure financial products where it's like I take this physical silver, or I don't own physical silver, I own shares of this pile of silver over here, so I own silver and it's over there. I mean, like the big companies, well, total side note, right? The LME lawsuit, that's one that I think is interesting. And I understand why they reached the result that they do on that because of the interests of the country of England. But, those guys who are trading metric tons of nickel back and forth, they're not like handing each other tons of nickel. It's not physically moving from A to B. They're just moving it on paper is all they're doing. So.
I mean, I guess that's true. Yeah, I guess that's true. So moving back to SBF.
We're talking about the inner circle thing, and I don't get what your point was of like, could this all have been avoided if there was more sunlight on it?
We're talking about liability. Is what I think we're talking about. Like in the sense of like, could SBF argue that he had no idea what was going on? Like he's too far removed.
I think he tried and lost.
I mean, but that's anyone's argument in these type of positions. That's like almost all white-collar crimes are the CEO saying, I had no idea. And it's like, yes, you did.
Well, and sometimes that's true, but then, the buck stops with the boss. I mean, because I've seen bar discipline things where what you get is some lawyer hires a paralegal who stays with the firm for 20 years, and they're just $100 here, $100 there, and 5 years go by and they've stolen, $84,000 worth of client funds, and you notice only because the $84,000 is missing. You never would have noticed the $100, and it's because you trusted the paralegal. Now, ultimately, the lawyer is probably correct to say, I had no clue that my paralegal was stealing money, but at the same time, you're still responsible for it. You've got to repay it, and you're on the hook because you should have had better oversight to make sure that the paralegal wasn't stealing money, and you allowed this to happen because you're the only person who has any control to do anything about it, right? Yeah. I mean, if SBF doesn't look and just buries his head in the sand, how is he then absolved from responsibility when he's the only person who has the ability to look? Yeah,
but again, we're talking about someone who started a company in 2019, and by 2021, he's got billions of dollars in Alameda.
To the dangers of a company growing too quickly?
I guess the point is it's not gradual. It's not taking $5 here, $5 there. We put billions of dollars from FTT coins into Alameda Research to then buy FTT coins to boost up the FTT coins.
And that's probably why the prosecution wins on this is garden variety fraud. It's not actually that complicated when you get down to it. The theoretical, outside edge of it. Because I guess I'm saying I don't disagree with you. That, if that's what you're doing and you weren't looking at that, I'm kind of not going to say, oh, gosh, well, that's an understandable oversight. I'm going to say, well, that's just stupid.
Do you think there's some psychology in people's heads that are this smart or this whatever that they think they're not going to get caught? Or because I'm just thinking if you're that rich and you're that in the spotlight, isn't it just a matter of time if you're doing something wrong that someone's going to find it?
I think I always see that after the fact, but I mean, what's his face? Madoff, right? Kept thinking he was going to get caught and didn't get caught until it was just in the face of regulators of his own family members are like, dude, this guy's just stealing money. Why have you not caught this guy yet? And so that I think is out there. But I think about that with some of the people that I went to law school with, because there's a couple of people that I've gone to law school with that are no longer practicing lawyers. They have, for bad stuff, in their practice. And I wonder, how did you go from being a normal person in law school to this incredibly deceptive, devious person? And I think it's just taking steps. You take a small step down the road of dishonesty, then you go really far down that road. You just take the next step, take the next step, take the next step. I think that's the only way that it could ever happen because based on my worldview, I believe, that never attribute malice where incompetence would suffice, and that people make the decision that they believe to be in their best interest when they make that decision. Because I understand people that way and I understand the world that way, that's what leads me to that inevitable conclusion. If my premises are wrong, then my premises are wrong, and that's not the inevitable conclusion. But I see that as the only way that you get there. You don't start out just robbing banks. You steal a little bit here and a little bit there, and then you sort of graduate to the next stage to get the next thing.
So you think SBF along the way before this was maybe making small choices that then affected his decision to be let's take these FTT coins from people and put billions of them over into Alameda?
I think so. A little bit of deviousness, in school, a little bit of deviousness while you're trading, and then you start to deal with the fake it till you make it kind of people where lies are okay because we'll just make the money, and then once we make the money and make the product that works, we're good. I think it I don't know, man, to be honest with you.
What's the Theranos' person? What was her name again?
Elizabeth
Holmes.
Yeah.
I mean, she was just
fake it till you make it, bro.
I mean, that's what she was doing too. She was just flat out I've got the cure, and getting billions of dollars and just.
There are some thought processes that a lot of people believe in that do damage to our society. Fake it till you make it is definitely one of them, unless it works out for you, right? The idea, especially within the finance community, of it's all about, you could charge as much as somebody's willing to pay for it. That creates an outcome which is an unfair, unjust outcome, but people still believe in that, right? Which causes you to jack prices up and consequences be damned. I don't care if I'm hurting these people over here. They're willing to work for 12 hours, so I'll just keep them working for 12 hours. Screw them and their lives and their family. Well, if they're willing to work for $13 an hour, let's see if we can hire somebody else for $12.75. What about $12.50? And some of those things, the bad thought processes that people have, impact our world, but for some reason people still believe in them because it works.
I'm wondering at what point do you feel like, if you're SBF, do you feel like you have so much power that you're kind of not, you're above the law, right? Like I think about Jordan Belfort, right?
But I think that it's right before. He might be a little bit different, but I think it's right before you start donating heavily to Congress. I think you probably, if you're SBF, see the writing on the wall and think, ultimately, those people over there are going to be the ones who decide my fate. I need to give them money and get them on my side.
He gave money to Biden's campaign, right? Or
I think the most damning one is the chick who's in charge of the Financial Regulatory Committee. Oh my gosh, I don't remember where that senator lady is from.
Elizabeth. No, you're not talking about...
the one who ran the GameStop hearings.
Yeah, what's her name? Senator
who runs maybe it's a House
she's really
Finances
against crypto, though.
Committee.
Is that who you're talking
about?
I
think she was on his side. There's pictures of her hugging him.
Elizabeth Warren.
Not Elizabeth Warren. She's a consumer financial protection person.
Who am I I was going to say she's very anti-crypto.
Consumer protection. She's pro consumer protection is what it seems like. Did you find the lady? She's old. Well, they're all old. That doesn't help much.
She's old and rich and
in charge of the it's either the House Financial Services Committee or the Senate Committee on Banking or something like that.
You could just type in who did SBF donate to?
Actually, that's true. That would work too.
Because he was donating to a lot of people.
But the right people, the finance people, the people who could change the rules and make what he was doing more criminal than it was. Although, again, apparently, according to Janine, he's facing decades in prison in the so what function of the justice system.
Yeah, I guess that's a part where I'm pretty naive and I don't know what he's facing. What
decades.
are the
He's facing decades worth of time, which creates, I think, the Jordan Belfort problem, right? Where if you've got a Jordan Belfort who's pretty good at cheating the system but making money, and you don't let him use those skills but give him a big bill for what he has to repay, how in the hell do you expect a guy like Jordan Belfort to ever repay the amount of money? You could let him do what he's good at, which you shouldn't trust him to do based on his past behavior. Let him do what he's good at, let him make the money, and use that money to repay people. It's a weird paradox of, do you let SBF trade crypto from inside a prison until he pays back $8 billion? Because he might be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
And if he can do it without stealing, which is possible for him to do, why not let him get the money back to the people that he owes money to and add some interest on there or whatever, because you don't want to trust him to go back into the crypto world.
Yeah.
No. Maybe she's out of Florida. I'm going to use my phone on this. You got to take it away while I look up this lady. I want to say Donna, maybe?
Well, I think it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Belfort, after he was convicted, wrote a book and then started teaching.
Yeah.
He went around, started teaching afterward. He was only spent, a year and a half in prison? It wasn't...
he ratted out all his friends.
and then he became rich off of him going around telling people how to do it right.
I don't think he is rich. I don't know if that's the truth. I don't know if he actually has it, because he had big bills. Bankman-Fried's going to get an $8 billion bill.
Yeah, but again, we're living in a country where it's I feel like the rich still aren't even held accountable in the same ways that everybody else is. Alex Jones, right? He owed $1 billion, and then he's still. I think I read Alex Jones.
But that wasn't okay. So that's not direct economic loss. You're talking about a non-economic loss there, where they really wanted Alex Jones to stop. Right? Stop going out there and saying that the death of my kid is fake. And they successfully convinced him to stop, because otherwise he's going to have to pay for it. It's not an actual, direct economic loss. Where
he's
it's not
making money off of what he's saying.
Gave him $100.
He's got a TV show and everything else, and he's getting investors, and he's getting people liking what he's saying. And so I think there is a direct economic gain in him saying things, and people are paying because they like what they're hearing. But there's real... I think it was determined he owed over $1 billion. He hasn't paid a cent, and people were watching. He's spending $60,000 to $90,000 a month on sort of his just leisure life activities, and now they're talking about settling at $85 million. because he was just not willing to pay the $1 billion. So
Yeah, but
is
if he
SBF
stops, they
gonna
get what
be-
they want.
I wonder if SBF is going to be held accountable for paying that full $8 billion.
Oh, I think he'll have a bill for it. Will he ever actually get it paid off?
Yeah.
Probably not if they don't let him trade crypto. Hey, so the follow-on question is, how is SBF positively or negatively impacting trust within crypto, and then money markets beyond that, which I think it's interesting that at the close of SBF's trial, after the convictions come out, that's when you start to see crypto go back up. I wonder if there's some nefarious actors, some people who did not like SBF who were artificially holding it down, waiting to see what happened. But my personal opinion is he's a blip. He's a blip on the radar. Even like Madoff, the whole financial system didn't collapse just because Madoff stole a bunch of money from some people.
I think the way that our world is working now is 99% of the people don't care.
Yeah, or don't know.
I don't know. Like if I went around town today and just said, "Do you know who SBF is or Sam Bankman-Fried?" I bet you less than 1% of people would be able to be like, "Oh, I know who that is." So I think people care more about Kim Kardashian than they do about who is who is running for president. Yeah, Taylor. So I think the people it's going to affect are the people who are running the game. So I think that it's a magic trick of, oh, look over here while we pull everything over here. I mean,
are you saying that you think in this time period where maybe some trust has gone down in crypto as a viable financial asset, that there's been a group of people making a lot of money?
Here's what I think. I think that the people who know crypto is the future are trying to convince everyone it's not, because if you can hold on to a larger, if you can control who's in and who's out, then you're more likely to stay a billionaire. You don't want everyone to become billionaires, because then no one is a billionaire, right? Like I think the argument is,
it's pessimistic.
Well, but I think it's the truth, right? Like I think the cards are, like, for example, I mean,
relative value of money. Sorry.
Well, I mean, just like if you think about it, like when XRP was sued by the SEC and it came out that a lot of the people who worked for SEC owned XRP.
Yeah.
Right? There's just this level of like, what's really going on here? Yeah. Again, look over here while we pull the strings over here, because anytime something happens in crypto, guess what happens? Some news story about Taylor Swift comes out at the same time, or whoever, so then you're paying attention to these other stories.
I don't think anybody's controlling it. There might be people trying to influence it one way or
maybe
another.
Maybe I'm a conspiracist.
I don't think people have that much ability to control the world. I think you can put a thumb on the scale, but that's about as much as you can push the world when it's this big and this complicated. But my personal opinion is I have more faith in crypto because of the weird nerds programming stuff than I do in our financial markets in general, just because there are so many embedded bad actors within the financial markets that don't even think what they're doing is bad. I have very little faith in that. Now I'm going to try to make it better as best I possibly can. I know I can't fix it, but I have less faith in that than I do in crypto.
I mean, my opinion is, like, whether you like it or not, like, the train has left the station. Like, we now do all our grocery shopping online. We do our banking.
I don't. I still go to the grocery store.
Okay, well, you are one in a million.
Yeah, and probably a dying breed.
Yeah.
Janine, do you buy your groceries online or you go to the store?
I bought it online before, but I go to the store.
I mean, you've got Amazon delivering packages. You date online.
We bought a shed, and that shed is coming from Amazon for sure.
You've got drones. I mean, the future is all digital. And so why is it that our banking system is still held back in the 1950s? It's based on a system that should have been sort of moving in a different direction.
All of the stocks that I own, though, are held on the computer through either a brokerage or direct registration. So some company somewhere has a marking in their ledger about what I, in theory, own, and because I have the ability to access it, my name's attached to the account, I own it.
Yeah, but like all those things are really happening because some guy in a suit on Wall Street is going over to some other place and saying, "Hey, jack up this thing and I'll do this thing for you," right? Like, I mean, remember the movie The Big Short?
Yeah.
Remember how the whole like rating system was just based upon?
But it's so much more ambient. Like the conversation we were having the other day about workers' comp, right? You get 100 doctors to render an opinion, and on that bell curve of opinions that they're rendering on this injured worker, you rehire the ones that are like, oh, that's just arthritis.
Right.
That broken leg really is just degenerative bone crap. He didn't really break his leg.
You keep the people who are willing to give you the information you need.
I think that's the thing with Moody's, right, is that it's more ambient. There's no overt, hey, I would like you to give me a good rating.
It's a wink.
It's just
a wink.
It's a financially, right? It's I'm not going to rehire you. I'll go to the other rating agency that is going to give me the rating that I want. I think that's what they were doing, and so it is more ambient than that.
I mean, I think the point I'm making is that like crypto is the future. I think. I mean, how many people carry cash on them now?
Yeah, I think I got $50.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, Janine, do you have cash on you?
I have $17.
Yeah, just pocket money enough where like if you need to buy a soda or something like that, you got enough cash.
Who's on the nickel? What president is on the nickel?
I'm carrying cash because he gave me cash, but normally no, I don't.
Okay, so what president is on the nickel? See,
It's Jefferson,
It's
right?
Jefferson.
Yeah.
So
Say that.
so see, my point is that the younger generations don't even know. Do you know what a buffalo nickel is?
I know who's on the 100.
Who?
Benjamin.
And was he a president?
Yes.
No, he wasn't.
Benjamin Franklin was not a president. Well,
He wasn't.
he's
wasn't.
not.
And then the 9-year-old niece that I've got, or I guess she's a second cousin, who's like, the internet doesn't lie. You're probably right that trust is moving towards the digital stuff, that I have more faith that my groceries are going to get there by using the internet.
Yeah. And so I guess my point is I believe crypto is the whole point of crypto. I mean, maybe we should have said this in the beginning, is to take the power out of the hands of the centralized banks, right? Like that's the whole
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea is to say people deserve the right to have control over their own money. And so we're going to take it out of...
People deserve the right to have control of their
CDBs.
own money. Well, that, I think, is a bad system waiting to happen. I really do not want my government to know every single transaction I make all the time, even if it's innocuous. But I'm also so much of a skeptic. I don't have a Safeway card because I don't want Safeway tracking me,
Yeah.
I'm that guy, but I'm more distrustful, I think, than other people.
I mean, I guess the idea of crypto, though, is to just give yourself a little more like I mean, the whole idea is if you have to...
Well, the U.S. government can't print more Bitcoin.
Right. And they don't want to not be able to do that. They want to be able to have the power to do that.
It benefits the U.S. government until they abuse it, and when they abuse it, then people aren't going to have as much faith in the dollar.
Okay, I mean, if I am moving from, if I own some $100 billion company in China, and I'm making business with some company in Argentina, and we transfer funds, those funds have to go to this bank, then to this bank, then to this bank, then to this bank to change the currency, right?
Or Bitcoin, XRP. I agree. I think it's way better.
And each of those banks take a huge fee, and
because they're providing some value to the humans, but not if you're more efficient on like an XRP to transfer money.
And it takes 5-7 days at the minimum.
Right. You don't need a bunch of human effort. You've got the computer. Just the XRP showed up. It's done.
So what those types of cryptocurrencies are doing are they're taking the power of the banks, right? They're saying, yeah, now you don't have to go to the bank. Now you can just...
power of the bank, you mean the revenue stream of the bank.
Well, but that is power. The bank says, we're going to... You make this... You just want to transfer $100 million. Guess what? We're going to take $4 million just for transferring it.
Yeah. That's... a total side point, but that's part of why I think money is stupid, because you're saying, I think probably correctly, that money is power because money can motivate people to do stuff. But if power corrupts, and money is power, then collectively I don't want to be corrupt. So why do I ever want money?
Who's it that said absolute power corrupts absolutely?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I don't remember who said that.
Oh fuck, I don't know. You're telling us to wrap it up? Oh, man.
All right, we're done.
so boring.
We're done.
Do you want to finalize with, another question? What's going to happen now?
Yeah, I mean, do you guys think the rules are going to change as far as how crypto is governed?
I think right now that's what the SEC is doing in general. Is the SEC is saying, hey, there's 100 million different cryptos out there. Not really 100 million. There's a lot of cryptos out there that mean jack shit. But if you think about it in comparison to all the websites and all the stuff that happened in the 90s, there was a lot of shit out there too, and then it kind of funneled down, and it was determined, hey, Apple and Google and some of those things are the big winners, and things always get questioned, but then guess what? They get regulated. And
you're talking about newspapers in the late 1800s where you get like tabloids which have got garbage news that they're providing to people, and eventually out of the ashes emerges a New York Times or a Wall Street Journal or something that's like a credible news source.
Yeah,
you're probably right.
I think that's the same with cryptocurrency.
That it'll just filter itself out. Some of it's crap, some of it's not, but the stuff that is reliable, is trustworthy.
Yeah. And I think the SEC isn't trying to get rid of cryptocurrency like they're saying. They're trying to say, hey, if this thing is existing, we want to have some control over it.
We want a hand on the wheel.
Yeah.
Probably.
So I think it's here to stay.
Cool.
Cool.
Till next time.